We have mentioned quarterbacks and plans and circumstances that the Pittsburgh Steelers should avoid at all costs. Well, one of them, Brooke Pryor believes, potentially could be an option for the Pittsburgh Steelers if this whole situation doesn't clear itself. Looking forward to next year, she said top tier quarterbacks don't often hit free agency, and 2026 isn't an expectation. Former first round pick Daniel Jones, who signed a 1-year deal in Indianapolis, is the best available free agent of the 2026 class so far. Other quarterbacks, though, that could be available in releases or trades: Anthony Richardson Sr., Indianapolis's other quarterback, and its 2023 first round pick, is competing with Jones for the starting job. Whoever comes in second could be available. She hints at the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Indianapolis Colts are at least one of their quarterbacks figuring this thing out. And I'll ask you, as we've talked Anthony Richardson and other quarterbacks for a long time on this show. He has never once been mentioned as a name the Pittsburgh Steelers should go get. And otherwise, in actuality, has been named a warning that the Pittsburgh Steelers should avoid at maybe all costs. Him and Daniel Jones. Two-parter here for you. I want your reaction on her naming, and shout out Brooke, dude. She's a phenomenal journalist. Mm-hmm. I want your reaction on naming Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones options in 2026. And then I want to know how bad it could be if either of them is an outcome.
So my favorite part of the article from Brooke, and I'm a big fan of Brooks at all. This is not me shading her at all. But my favorite part was whoever comes in second could be available, as if there is some long line already forming to acquire the backup quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. If there is a race, or if there is some sort of bidding war for Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson Sr., like, the NFL's in dire straits. The Pittsburgh Steelers are in dire straits. Those are two very, Richardson he's what, 24, 23 right now? So he 23. Has 23. Thank you. So he has, time to figure it out, so to speak. And Daniel Jones has, I think, 70 games of NFL experience under his belt. So he is what he is. I find it very difficult to believe that either one would be an option that, it doesn't bring me any sort of optimism or joy. It makes me feel like we might be scraping the absolute bottom of the barrel in that situation. So that gave me a good chuckle reading that line, as if there will be any sort of like courting process or, people engaging in talks to acquire Anthony Richardson Sr. after he plays 4 games again this year. If you bring in one to boost competition or like as just, a backup in 2026, depending on what happens with the current quarterback room, completely different conversation. I am far less standoffish. I probably even, I even encourage it, just because we don't know what's going to happen. But to see either of them as any sort of legitimate backup option or a direction that the Steelers could pivot is just laughable. That would just be a terrible situation. And then what was the second part?
You just answered it. Would it be a terrible situation? Yeah, it would be. And I agree with you. It would be like you are essentially taking a step backwards. And people will ask, they'll say, well, what about, Will Howard or Mason Rudolph? To be honest with you, I'd be better and more comfortable with in-house options to say, if next year you don't get a guy, just be okay with not having a guy. Now, if you want to go get Anthony Richardson and you want to get him for nothing and you give him a 6th round pick and he ends up being Justin Fields again, sure, why not? But it doesn't change any of your plans. You still go and try to get a quarterback early. And if you don't get a quarterback early, you still hold a competition with Will Howard and Mason Rudolph. You don't hand anybody a job in Pittsburgh next year. And I mean, it's awful, but if you're going and looking at either of these guys as starting caliber possibilities a year from now, it is wild how bad things have gotten for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because at some point you can't be the Colts anymore. At some point you can't be the Cleveland Browns anymore. You just have to be a team who could figure out their quarterback situation no matter how bad it gets. I'll ask a very straightforward question here. If next year is a matter of it could get really, really bad and it might be the tank season, but You know that you're not going to latch yourself onto another nonsense veteran quarterback and extend this BS that the Steelers are going through, or go and get a Daniel Jones. What side of the coin are you taking?
Are you suggesting that
you don't tank, but you know that it's going to be bad? You know you're the Saints. You're the Saints. You know it's going to be bad.
Oh, man, I mean, what? Talk about a total just like catch-22. There is no good option here. I mean, if we're going full on tank and the options are going to be bad either way, I think I would rather roll with like a Will Howard or than bring in a Daniel Jones. But I could also, you could, do the sort of not tank immediately approach, but it would really be an effort to tank if you were like, we brought in Daniel Jones, here's the next stopgap quarterback, in the same lines of the Mitch Trubisky's, in the same lines of Russell Wilson for a year, Justin Fields for a season, what have you. Daniel Jones comes in 2026. You're like, this is our starting quarterback for this year, and then we're going to figure it out in 2027, like we've been saying every year for the past 5-6 years. Well, then I think the writing would be on the wall already there as well. It's a tank season for sure. So, oof, man, the things are bad if that is a realistic option that we were talking about come, summer of 2026.
I agree.
That would just be bad.
It's almost worst case scenario. The Pittsburgh Steelers, and look at again, I'd go Anthony Richardson over Daniel Jones any day of the week. I wouldn't even think twice about it. And my only thought there would be like, this guy stinks, but you never know. Maybe, he has unreal talent and he came in super young. Do I think it develops? No, I think he's too deep into this to develop more than what he has. But at the same time, again, you just never know. Daniel Jones would be, I'd rather just hand the keys to Mason Rudolph or to Will Howard and say, what do you got, kid? Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. There you go. I'd rather go draft somebody in the second round next year or the third round next year and say, see what you got, over going that way. I think it goes backwards. And I think that's what Aaron Rodgers has done to the Pittsburgh Steelers, has shown them this offseason. Just like I'm out of options, you're out of options. It's done. You can't do this. You can't go any deeper into this nonsense because it just gets worse from here. It doesn't get any better. I think these two are yikes. God, you look like you got thoughts.
Yikes. No, and I get like, this is I understand the time of the year and the offseason that we're in, where like everything does have some semblance of possibility. Like there is a chance any of this could happen.
Yeah.
But man, I would stand very much by this statement I'm about to make, that Will Howard or Mason Rudolph would absolutely win, probably double the games that Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson would win for the Steelers in 2026. I just don't see how that's even really up for debate unless one of those quarterbacks has the renaissance of all renaissances for quarterbacks. There's just nothing appealing about either of those options besides just being competition. So
I saw ESPN also predict that Daniel Jones was going to win comeback player of the year. So you never know. You never know. Okay. Although in my opinion, two wild takes by ESPN. Nothing else. I don't view it any other way than two wild takes. Give me your list of quarterback options, and I didn't prep you for this. Give me your list of quarterback options in 2026 from best to worst to best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Doesn't have to be, if you got specific names, they're out there, but give me your worst outcome and your best outcome for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Best outcome, I think, is fairly easy to assess.
Yeah, and easy. Everybody knows it.
You get the top 10 quarterback. You get someone who's franchise altering for sure. That remains the best case scenario. Will be the best case scenario. Is the most likely scenario for the Steelers.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario is you don't get any of the top quarterbacks in 2026. You still have Mason Rudolph and. You still have Mason Rudolph. You still have Will Howard as two of your quarterbacks on your roster, and you sign someone like Daniel Jones. You sign someone like Sam Darnold. You sign someone like who's another name that you like, Kirk Cousins or something like that, who has somehow been, he's been released after a year of not getting traded out of Atlanta. You get someone like that. You continue the cycle as we've been kind of talking about. If you do something like that, but it isn't a Hall of Famer 4-time MVP quarterback that you go after to sign, you're in the worst case scenario. You can put Geno Smith in there. You could put a bunch of other names in there, and I would consider them all to be worst case scenario for the Steelers, because a stopgap quarterback is just absolute nightmare fuel for 2026 and for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay, I agree. All right, you want my list? Because it's very similar to yours. Mm-hmm. Best case scenario is you find your guy, first round pick, whatever. Mm-hmm. Second best case scenario in my eyes is Aaron Rodgers looks good enough to say, come on back one more time. Let's run it. Let's do it again. Third worst case scenario is you got to give Will a shot. Will versus Mason, mano on mano. Who pulls it out? Who's your starting quarterback in 2025? Because to be honest with you, like, let's just see what happens. You know what I mean? Maybe Will's got something in it. He's going to win it. You know, you're not going to put Mason Rudolph in a quarterback competition in Pittsburgh and have him walk away the winner. That doesn't happen. There's rules. Fourth and last. No. Fourth would be mid-round draft pick that you just fell to. Screw it. Whatever. We got to get a guy. We'll grab him. And then dead last scenario to me is bringing in a veteran who somehow found himself so available that the Pittsburgh Steelers have to go make a move and say, that's our guy post NFL draft, because it will be post NFL. They are not going to go sign a quarterback. They're not going to get a Mitch Trubisky next year, you know, to prep for Kenny Pickett. They're just going to get Kenny Pickett. That's what they want to do. They just want a first round quarterback. So if there's a guy still available, like a Kirk Cousins or an Anthony Richardson or all these nonsense, post-draft, that is the worst outcome for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2026. That's as bad as it gets, to be totally honest. Like that's worst case scenario by far.
That is them. That, oh my goodness, I think shaking in my boots right now, just kind of thinking about that possibility playing out. And I truly hadn't even considered the possibility of like a mid-round draft pick in 2026, and like that's the extra person. Either way, it's still going down that same path for me, where it's like, if you don't have that guy that is genuinely, and the consensus is that he is the franchise quarterback or has the overwhelming majority to become one, you're setting this organization back even further. And I know drafting a quarterback is a very impossible task, but there are no other options. They have left themselves no other path forward to win a Super Bowl beyond this year.